Good evening, folks. It is my pleasure to call the May 17th, 2023 meeting of the Town of Farmville Planning Commission to order. Welcome to those in attendance, both here in person and virtually. We have a pretty packed agenda tonight, and we are excited to get going. So we will now ask for a roll call.
Mr. Patterson.
Here.
Ms. Johnson. Here. Mr. Davenport.
Here.
Dr. Miller. Here. Ms. O'Connor.
Here.
Mr. Weiss.
Here.
Mr. Crute.
Here.
Alrighty. Having had the opportunity to review the agenda, I would love to take a motion for approval or any additions or corrections if there are any.
I'll move that we accept the agenda.
Second.
It has been moved and second to accept the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alrighty. We now move into the public participation portion of our agenda. Just for folks to know, this initial public participation is for speakers to...
Cam,
Excuse me,
Mr. Patterson,
Cam.
we need to do the minutes.
So taking a step back, we will ask folks to offer an approval of the minutes and any additions or corrections, if any.
I think there's one correction that we need. In the section, the second paragraph, public participation, I believe Ms. Caton's first name is misspelled there on the first page. You see what I'm talking about?
We will double check it
Okay.
against her
Okay.
application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other corrections to note?
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest something on page 2 of 2. I know the list was not meant, the list of bullet point items was not meant to be all-inclusive, but an important one that is, we did discuss that's not on the list is use types and mix. The list of bullet points.
Yep,
there's
absolutely.
like 6 or 7 or 8. That was one that we definitely discussed for a while.
Absolutely.
The use types and the mix of uses.
Appreciate that. Any further additions, corrections? With the corrections that were noted, we will now ask for an approval of the minutes.
Move to approve.
Second?
It has been moved and second. All those in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All righty. Now we come to the public participation portion of our meeting. For the speakers that have signed up, this is your time to make statements on non-agenda items. For all of the additional items listed on the agenda, there will be an additional public participation portion related to each individual item. So this is for non-agenda items. So if we have any speakers signed up, we will ask them to come forward.
No, sir.
No speakers. All righty. With us having no speakers for public participation, item 6 on our agenda relates to a public hearing for CUP 23-001, a conditional use permit request from Karen B. Caton to allow for a convenience store in the R1 low-density residential district. The site is located at 505 Griffin Boulevard and consists of parcel numbers 0023A07, parentheses 0706-004, and 0023A07, parentheses 0706-003A, and contains approximately 0.349 acres. So the order of which we will move on this will be our staff report, public participation, and deliberation from the Planning Commission. And so we will first turn for a staff report.
Thank you. The site is located at 505 Griffin Boulevard and consists of 2 parcels containing a total of approximately 0.349 acre. The request is to convert a 1-story brick building into a neighborhood convenience store. The property was purchased by 505 Griffin Boulevard LLC from Prince Edward County Board of Supervisors in February of 2023. The property was previously owned by the Senior Citizens of Prince Edward County Incorporated, also known as Meals on Wheels. The zoning ordinance allows a store neighborhood convenience by conditional use permit in the R1 low-density residential district. A store neighborhood convenience is defined in section 2981 as the following: establishments primarily engaged in the provision of frequently or recurrently needed goods for household consumption, such as prepackaged food and beverages and limited household supplies and hardware. Convenience stores shall not include fuel pumps or the selling of fuel for motor vehicles. Typical uses include neighborhood markets and country stores. There are no additional standards for this specific use listed in Section 2935 of the Town Code. The property has access to town's public water and sewer system. No improvements are required to public streets for the applied use. There are bus stops located at the site as well as across Griffin Boulevard at its intersection with Franklin Street. Griffin Boulevard is classified by VDOT as a major collector route. These routes have lower driveway connection densities and higher annual average traffic volume. These routes collect traffic from local streets and channel it to the arterial system. The site is not located in an overlay district, floodplain, or other protected area. There are not impacted watercourses, steep slopes, or other atypical environmental factors. Emissions such as dust, heat, noise, light, vibrations, etc. should be minimal for commercial use. Here are some pictures of the site from last week to show the current state of the building. Here are some conceptual slides to show what the building could look like. This is what the outside front would look like possibly. This is a conceptual floor plan and a conceptual site plan to show parking. The submitted conceptual floor plan does not align with the applied use for a store neighborhood convenience. Even though there would be no significant impact to environmental impacts or to the adjacent properties, and there would be no significant impacts to the capacities of the utility or transportation system, the staff recommends denial of the conditional use for a store neighborhood convenience. We did receive 2 phone calls that should be read during the public hearing and 1 petition against the conditional use permit. That is all I have for the staff report.
Before we move into public participation, we'll just give this group an opportunity to ask questions related to the staff report. Mr. Weiss.
Yeah, I have a couple. Ashley, your comment about the conceptual floor plan not aligning, does the staff, when it receives an application for a CUP, typically get a floor plan? And would it, is the fact that this doesn't align unusual?
We did not receive the floor plan with the application. Moving forward, we will request all pertinent documents with the application. So a site plan, a conceptual layout, and floor plan.
But even if you'd received it with the application, your point is it doesn't look like a convenience store on the inside? Is that?
Correct.
Okay,
The layout does not look like a convenience store.
I got you.
Dr. Miller.
So maybe we'll hear about this during the public comment period, but what is the intended use if there's no retail space on the submitted floor plan?
I will let the applicant answer that question.
Any additional?
a related one is, in that neighborhood of R1, I've driven back and forth, or in other R1s, do we have a convenience store anywhere that's, or another permitted retail type use in an R1 elsewhere?
I know we have other commercial uses on Griffin Boulevard, but as for a convenience store, I do not believe we have another convenience store in an R1.
Is it pertinent to get that clarifying question from the applicant now, or to do that during public participation? Any other questions before we move forward? Perfect. We will come back to the questions that we have, but we'll offer an opportunity for public participation for this particular conditional use permit request. As a reminder, for public participation, speakers will have 3 minutes to make their statements. There is a clock located near Ms. Watkins. And instead of us interrupting the flow of our speaker, we just ask that you be attentive and glance towards the clock. Ms. Watkins will help to keep time. And so I'm going to call for a motion to open the public hearing for CUP 23-001.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
It has been moved in second. All those in favor of opening public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Ms. Watkins.
Adrian Harris.
Hello, how are y'all? The reason why I'm coming up here is I've lived on Griffin Boulevard. I'll be 50 this year. I've lived on Griffin Boulevard all my life. We've never had a convenience store. I think maybe when we were small, a cold store selling penny cookies. But to put a convenience store, my question was like, I don't know, Mr. Miller, what is the purpose of it? We got a Dollar General up the street. We got a Family Dollars up the street. There's already enough traffic in the neighborhood. When you start bringing that type of environment into the neighborhood, that's not good for the neighborhood. We have kids. We have a lot of kids on our street. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm going to represent my mother and my sister. They have health issues. The traffic back and forth as it is on Griffin is already ridiculous anyway. To bring a store is just mind-boggling. I'm just trying to figure out what is the purpose of the store. Also, to me, people can do what they want to do with their money and whatever they choose to do, but it's the neighborhood. I've been living there all my life. Just because, and I'm not trying to be racial or anything, we don't have the money to do what some people do. That's unfair to us, because we've been living there all our life. And to bring that kind of traffic there, it's ridiculous to me, and it doesn't make any sense. But I'm just going to leave it at there, and I'll let y'all make your decision, whatever they decide. But that just don't make sense to us, to bring that store into a neighborhood where we live at and been living there all our life. Is that all? I mean, okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Nash Osborne.
Good evening. How are y'all? Good. Karen and I are the two folks that are trying to, and Brittany, to open this particular convenience store, as it were. And I can definitely understand the objections of the young lady that just spoke before me, because I would have the same reaction if it was going to be a traditional convenience store. I appreciate the opportunity to present our proposal for a convenient wellness operation and explain how our business model aligns with the convenience store definition of R1 zoning. The goods and services we plan to offer are the very epitome of convenience, from fresh-made grab-and-go drinks, coffee, pre-made sandwiches and salads, to a quick and easy bag of IV fluid to rehydrate. This business plan describes access to goods and services with little effort or difficulty, which is the very definition of convenience. In fact, convenience is at the cornerstone of our business model. We want our customers to stop in for a quick pick-me-up and get on with their busy lives. The services we offer typically take significant more time. For instance, if you're sick or dehydrated, or maybe have had a few too many the night before at one of your local bars, you can conveniently come to Feel Good Inc. and get a quick IV treatment in about 30 minutes and feel considerably better immediately. This is a level of convenience that you will not find if you were to have to make a trip to your local emergency room for the same procedure. Our hours of operation may have been of concern to local residents, which is understandable. When the words convenience store are mentioned, I can guarantee that our hours of operation will be no earlier than 6 a.m. and no later than 7 p.m. We believe this concept would be a welcome addition to our town, especially with the rise of wellness tourism and our ever-growing wedding and event spaces and related businesses here in Farmville. It has been our goal to make market improvements on our town, a town that I grew up in and chose to come back to and raise my family in. We try at every moment to make it better, as we have through our other businesses. This process has not always been so convenient, but we decided that it was best for our community to try to do so. It's our hope that you will consider the definition of convenience when making your recommendation for our conditional use permit. We understand that there may have been some objections to a traditional convenience store on this site, but that we are not. We will continue our quest to make Farmville a more vibrant and inviting place, one business at a time. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Oh, any other participants?
I have a letter from Perry and Alasia Mickey Carrington. They wish for me to share amongst the commissioners. To the Farmville Community Development Department, Farmville Planning Commission. Please be advised that we are 100% opposed to approving a conditional use permit to Karen B. Caton to allow for a convenience store in the R1 low-density residential district located at 505 Griffin Boulevard, Farmville, Virginia. We live 1 block away at 615 Griffin Boulevard and do not wish to have a convenience store that close to us or in our community. Griffin Boulevard is already an extremely busy street, and allowing the operation of a convenience store would mean added congestion for the residents of this area. Also, if this location is classed as R1, why should a convenience store be allowed? We are asking that you please consider the wish of the community residents not allow this permit to be approved. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Perry and Alasia Mickey Carrington. I also have a statement from Ms. Ernestine Harris that she want me to share amongst the commissioners. Ms. Ernestine Harris, current resident at 504 Griffin Boulevard, has concerns about the request for a convenience store at 505 Griffin Boulevard. She resided at 501 Griffin Boulevard from the year of 1945 until the year of 1974, and she has resided at 504 Griffin Boulevard since 1974. She has grandkids and great-grandkids that get off the school bus at her residence until the parents finish working. She feels like it will be too much traffic in the small residential area and that their community at Griffin Boulevard is not a place for a convenience store. She also expresses concerns about the prospective convenience store being too close in proximity of Jericho Baptist Church, where she is an attending member. Ms. Harris has medical issues and her daughter as well that requires her to be well rested to accommodate her treatment schedule. She stated much noise and commotion that she is not accustomed to, and she stated that she's spoken to other residents of Griffin Boulevard and they share the same concerns. That is all.
Any additional statements or individuals signed up?
No, sir.
Is there,
Maureen Harris. So I'm Ernestine's daughter. That's my baby sister. What I want to say is that my thing is they should do, other than a convenience store, need to look around at the things that Prince Edward County needs that we could benefit from. For one, it used to be a senior citizen building where they could go meet up with each other, have potluck, that kind of thing. There's no more of that. Then we are fighting homelessness in Farmville. Make it into an apartment. It's a residential section already, so make it into a home or an apartment. That would be something. And the most rewarding thing that I really think would be something for the youth. Now, I work in Prince Edward County school system, and those children there, whew. They have trouble reading. I'm sorry. And I think it just should be something for the youth to come together. That's basically what I want to say. Thank you.
with no additional individuals signed up and no additional statements, we will now accept a motion to close out the public hearing, public participation portion for the conditional use permit request.
Before we do that, there were 2 phone calls that were referenced. Were those the letters, phone calls, or were there phone calls that?
Yes, sir. Yes.
You have a
Is now the
question?
time we can ask the proponent questions?
I would
Or,
do that during the deliberation
Okay.
portion.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Favor of closing the public participation portion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Alrighty, now we've reached the point where we will deliberate. So that is a moment where clarifying questions can be asked as needed. I will say as we begin our conversation, settling the question related to how this body will view the definition related to convenience site will be an important part of our discussion. The applicant has laid out how they view that definition, and then we certainly have the town's thoughts via their recommendation offered. Mr. Weiss, did you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I have a variety of questions, but to piggyback on exactly what you just said, I understood the applicant's comments about prepackaged food and beverage. That's right out of the definition. What I'm not sure I understood was the part about IV as an intravenous. Could you explain that? And is that something that needs some special, like, medical license to administer? I'm not, that one threw me. Whatever, yes.
That'd be appropriate. I would come to the mic just for those online.
right, the answer to that question is it does require special medical. And our partner, Brittany Wagner, is a nurse practitioner, and she would be overseeing that piece of that. And so there are lots of different aspects to this. This is sort of it becomes like a wellness center, and it's a place for obviously, like I said, our beverages and, like I said, prepackaged salads and sandwiches and stuff like this. It's not your traditional neighborhood convenience store, which I can completely understand the residents' objections to a place where there may be, late nights and a lot of traffic and things like that. But this would be more of an early morning, people coming in for coffees, for juices, for sandwiches, and so on, and maybe lunchtime traffic as well. It also, speaking to the medical side of it, there are a lot of different applications to this. People can come for a lot of different things. There's hydration therapy. There is also referenced or referred hydration therapy from a doctor, or again, if you're in need of fluids but don't want to go to the emergency room and get a $1,200 bill, you can come to our location and receive this in a matter of about 30 minutes. And so that is the definition from our side of convenience, and we think that it fits in. We don't and we know. I mean, we believe that we would become an asset to the local community and not a hindrance or something that they wouldn't want to see in that neighborhood. So, are there other questions?
And you mentioned the hours.
Yes.
Are 6 a.m. to 7
And
p.m.
that's a loose. There would be no earlier and no later. So,
7 days a week, 5 days a
no,
week?
and
6?
probably it would be 5 or 6 days a week.
While I'm on a roll here.
Sure.
Yeah, have you up here. Have you all given thought, just to round out so we know what we're dealing with here, signage for one, lighting for two, it came up already, traffic, what kind of traffic impacts would be created?
We only have 12 spots at the facility or at the store. So there wouldn't be, a lot of it would be, there would be pretty quick grab and go stuff. So there's not going to be any sit down. There's not going to be any, the only people that would be there for any length of time would be the folks that would be there to get their treatments, or 30 minutes at most. So no, we've looked at it and we don't think that there would be any real traffic impact to the neighborhood, other than the people that would be parked in the parking lot.
And have you also thought about screening of the site, like on the side? It's very, depending on where you are, it's very visible to other properties.
Sure.
Is there some plan about screening or buffering?
I mean, those things are definitely, we could definitely look into in the site plan. I mean, we could get into the landscape architecture of the site and say if there was, if that was a requirement or if it was even a request, fencing or screening or some sort of green screen or something that we could do that would help, or it would be beneficial to the residents. Again, we don't ever want to be a nuisance where we are. I mean, we try to come into the town and do things responsibly, and we think that this project over there is a very quiet project. I don't think you'll hear from us at all. I don't think there'll be any extra noise, or I don't think that there's anything that would be, like I said, a nuisance to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else?
Appreciate that clarification. Since we have Nash, Abby, you got a question?
Yeah, I just look at the floor plan, Nash, and there's like 2 single rooms, there's a lounge area, there's a group room. I'm just trying to figure out what goes on in all these spaces.
So essentially what happens is, like, let's just say you have a wedding party in town and they could book like a morning session. It's very popular nowadays to go and get IVs for wedding parties, for groups. I mean, wellness tourism is really, really big right now. And so we've done a lot of research into it. We've looked at it. There's also the capability of doing an off-site sort of a food truck approach to this as well, for different events. I was at one in Atlanta last year, and it was available during the day. And so, yeah. So I mean, this isn't a new concept. It's a new concept for Farmville because we don't have this. And again, we felt like that when we chose that site, it really sort of fit because it was something that wasn't going to be impactful to the local community in a negative way. It was very sort of a kind of low-key, quiet, even advantageous to some of the local community with our other offerings of, coffee and juice and like I said, pre-made salads and sandwiches. So healthy options. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Abby's question got me not wondering. Are you anticipating that the mainstay of the business will be this IV service, or is it the prepackaged food and drink or mix?
I think
Half and half?
I think that initially it will probably be our prepackaged stuff, our coffee and our juices and stuff as things get going. I think that this is going to take a little bit of time to start getting more popular, but I do think that initially it will, yes.
Ms. Jane?
Hi. Nash, I have a question.
Sure.
Don't most nurse practitioners have to work under the license of a physician?
Yes, until they are, I guess it's, 5 years in? Yeah, and Brittany's almost at 5 years. So that would be the case. We would have an overseeing physician, as it were.
All right. But you don't have that person lined up yet?
We do.
Oh, you do?
We do, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Anybody else? Okay.
Thank you. Any other thoughts related to the definition piece or?
I mean, definitely the juice bar and what you're saying about the prepackaged sandwiches and the foods and the salads definitely meet that definition of the convenience store, in the town code. But also what you're talking about in terms of, an RN administrating treatments, if you define it as kind of convenient wellness, we don't have that definition in the code. Kind of the closest thing is you were talking, kind of scanning through this, is what I can find is either, a medical office or a clinic. And unfortunately, neither of those are either by right or conditional uses in R1. I mean, so it sounds like you're right, you're half a convenience store, but it looks like kind of just by the square footage of the layout and the ultimate kind of direction of the business model, it's like a medical office or a clinic. So I don't know if this is a new thing. Do we need to add something to the definitions and to the land use matrix or what? But I don't know that it kind of neatly fits into the convenience store definition, under which is being applied, the conditional use permit is being applied for.
From a staff perspective, in your evaluation, were we looking at the site plan in terms of the building layout to kind of drive that thought?
For the staff recommendation?
Yeah.
Yes, it was driven by the layout.
Related question, Ashley, were you, when you were considering this, the staff was considering, it, were you aware of the IV hydration aspect of the plan? And did you have an opportunity to look at definitionally whether this fits?
I did not have this floor plan with the application. This floor plan was received this week, or late last week, early this week. I can't remember.
No, I
But it did
understand
not
that.
come in with the application.
I understand that.
The
I meant
application
this-
was for a convenience store.
I understand. Did this notion of IVs and hydration, was that
No.
not part of the discussion?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just speak briefly on this. I like the idea of having mixed use, but I think, it's been said that this does not, the spirit of the idea of a community convenience store, I don't think this fits. I like the idea of it in general, in this location.
Let me go back to Rhett's question. Yes, I don't know if it was with Ashley, but it depends on what staff you were talking about. The concept of having that as a part in some fashion within the convenience store, yes, was a conversation, but not the predominant amount of the store.
So I guess then, that just sort of begs the question, what is the staff's reaction to that aspect of the proposal? Like John mentioned, doesn't seem to fit within the letter of the definition. It seems to add sort of a element of medical clinic or medical office or something medical to it. So I'm just, I'm just curious, what is the staff's reaction to that piece of the proposal?
So I'm going to interrupt and move that we defer for a couple reasons. One, I think if you've never seen the concept that is being described, it has connotations that aren't there. It is, so this is one of my other jobs talking now, like it is an industry trend, like that is especially in more urban areas, like they're ubiquitous almost. And so I think when we hear IV, like we hear going to a doctor or getting treated by an EMT, and while the function is the same, the setting is completely different. It's much more of a almost recreational event rather than a medical event. So I think I would recommend and move to defer so that staff can re-examine the project now with all of the information available. I also would recommend deferring because I think we do a disservice to the residents and the applicant by focusing on the word convenience store. Because it, again, like from everything being described today, it does not sound like a traditional convenience store. It's zoning, like there's R3 across the street from it, which I think does at least grandfathered or by right have some additional opportunities available to it. And so I would be interested in having the residents come back, and voice their opinion on the actual function of this business, which it doesn't sound like they've done thus far because, they haven't had the information because we're all learning about it at the same time, right? For whatever reason. So,
I would second that motion. I think it's very sensible, but I would also defer for additional reasons. For the applicant to come back with a more fully baked, if you will, no pun intended, plan with, aspects of signage addressed, lighting addressed, hours of operation, days of operation, just everything else that will go into these, what are the real impacts going to be in the area.
Any other thoughts on what Patrick's thrown out?
excuse me, I agree with Patrick in that. I think it makes sense to really get a bit more information, especially to let the neighbors understand what this is a bit more and think about how they feel about it.
The only thing I can say is, in fairness to the applicant, I think this is a sensible thing to do. But I can tell you the spirit of what's written there, that's not what was applied for either. So denial, reapply for something else, understand the plan, I still think is a reasonable thing to do as well. A convenience store, if you read the spirit of the way that's written, this doesn't fit. So in fairness to the applicant and to the community, I think you could potentially do that, but I don't know that we're going anywhere with it.
I agree with Patrick.
Any other? If you'd like to move forward with that thought, if you can put it in the form of a motion.
I move to defer.
Yeah, we're gonna vote. Second,
I'll still second the motion.
cool.
I seconded the motion before.
All those in favor of deferring the proposal signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. So we will let staff carry this forward and bring it back to the body. We now move to item 7 on our agenda, a public hearing for CUP 23-002, a conditional use permit request from Jim Roosevelt to allow for an accessory dwelling unit. The 0.516 acre site is located at 1204 6th Avenue on parcel number 0023A12, parentheses 0100-046. The property is zoned R1 low density residential. We'll have a staff report, public participation, and deliberation. Staff.
The site is located at 1204 6th Avenue and consists of one parcel that is approximately half an acre. The request is to convert space inside the home into an independent living space for a family member. Accessory dwellings are permitted by conditional use permit in the R1 low-density residential district. This use is compatible with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. The property is on town water and sewer and will not require any additional connections. There will be no significant impact to public streets. The site is a standard residential lot and is not located in a floodplain or other protected area. There are no impacted watercourses, steep slopes, or other atypical environmental factors. Emissions should be standard for residential use. This here is a layout, and it shows a south elevation to show what it would be an entrance to the accessory dwelling unit. Here are a couple of pictures to show the current residence. The application appears to meet the standards of review for a conditional use permit set forth in section 24-13C1 of the Town Zoning Code. The application appears to meet the comprehensive plan's land use goals and strategies. There are not significant impacts to the capacities of the utility or transportation systems. The approval of this single instance will not have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood fabric or neighboring properties because the accessory dwelling unit is housed inside the existing home. The staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for accessory dwelling unit at 1204 6th Avenue. We did not receive any public comments on this case. I can take any questions.
Any questions for staff regarding the conditional use permit request? If
I
not,
have a question.
Yep.
please. Ashley, there was nothing under the background portion of the report, but there was some Q&A later in the report that this is for the daughter of the owners, is that right?
That is correct, yes, sir.
So this isn't, for example, an Airbnb kind of proposal or a long-term or short-term rental. This is just a family trying to create an additional family living unit.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. If there are no additional questions, we will move to a public participation. Speakers have 3 minutes to make their statements. Is there a motion to open the public hearing for the conditional use permit request before you?
I'll make a motion that we open the public hearing portion of this conditional use permit hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. All those in favor of opening the public participation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any individuals that have signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Are there any individuals in the audience that would like to speak? You can come on forward.
Good evening. I'm Karen Feathers, and this is our home. And this is my daughter, Deanna, and she is going to be 24 this summer. And she has been in a program at Longwood called Longwood Life. Has been learning independent living skills. She now has a paying job at the Andy Taylor Center. And just as the next goal for her, we have a grandparent suite, where my father-in-law lived with us, and he passed away last summer, and it's a perfect location to create an independent living space for Deanna to be able to continue her level of independence and training, cooking, those kinds of things, and to have options for her next steps. It's also, her house is a great location because it's like 2 blocks away from a bus stop. Her next step is she wants to get some hours. She's been doing an internship at Food Lion. And so, the available days might be days where I have meetings and classes all day long, and it would give, that's something we're going to work on as the next step. And I think that's a real important thing. And one thing that's important for me as a teacher is to lead by example. And so she's in the program with us. And so we're really excited about this possibility. And I just really wanted to thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. If there are no additional speakers, we will ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Time for deliberation. Any comments, questions, thoughts?
I would move to approve. I mean, it's within existing walls. The only substantive change is based on their, the plan here is they're replacing one window with a door. So I think it's an easy call for me.
Any other thoughts?
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor of approving the conditional use permit, CUP 23-002, signify, well, we'll take a roll call vote.
Ms. O'Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Weiss,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Davenport,
Aye.
Mr. Patterson,
Aye.
Mr. Crute,
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
All righty. It has been approved. Thank you. Item 8 on the agenda, CUP 23-003, a conditional use permit request from Jefferson Mascot to allow for an accessory dwelling unit The 0.573 acre site is located at 801 Millwood Road on parcel 0023A14, parentheses 0A00-008. The property is zone R1 low density residential. Staff report, public participation, deliberation. Ms. Austin.
Yes. This request is to convert space inside the home into an independent living space for a family member. Again, accessory dwellings are permitted by conditional use permit in the R1 low-density residential district. This use is compatible with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. The property is on town water and sewer and will not require any additional connections. There are no significant impacts to public streets. The site is a standard residential lot and is not located in a floodplain or other protected area. There are no impacted watercourses, steep slopes, or other atypical environmental factors. Emissions should be standard for residential use. Here are some photos taken last week of the subject property. This accessory dwelling unit will be located in the basement of the structure. Staff findings: the application appears to meet the standards of review for a conditional use permit set forth in section 24-13C1 of the Town Zoning Code. The application appears to meet the comprehensive plan's land use goals and strategies. There are no significant impacts to the capacities of the utility or transportation systems. The approval of this single instance will not have a detrimental effect on the neighborhood fabric or neighboring properties because the accessory dwelling unit is housed inside the existing home. The staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit for an accessory dwelling unit at 801 Millwood Road. I can field any questions.
Ashley, this is an interesting comparison to the last request we just had, where it was clear how access was, on the side by that garage, and it's closed off from the rest of the house. How's this one accessed? I understand it's in the basement. How do you get to this?
I believe there is a door in the basement. He has applied for a building permit, and after review of the building permit, we noticed that he would have to get a conditional use permit for this accessory dwelling. So the one item that he does have to comply with on the building code side is to install an egress window for easy access to enter and exit if there was an emergency.
So does one get to this proposed unit by like going around the back of the house and in and out of a door?
I
on
am
the
not
side of the house?
positive. I have not seen a complete layout of the structure.
I guess what I'm getting at is I'm trying to understand what makes this accessory if it's.
It would be a bedroom, a small living area,
Right.
a bathroom, and a separate kitchen with no stove.
Right. But it could be, we don't know if you just get to it from inside the house or you get to it from outside the house.
I don't know at this time,
Okay,
no.
we don't know.
We could ask the applicant,
Okay.
but I know that the applicant is not here tonight.
Okay.
Any additional questions for staff? If not, we will take a motion to open the public participation portion.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of opening public participation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment? If not, we will take a motion to close the public participation portion.
So move to close?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public participation portion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All righty. Any questions, deliberation? We'll take a motion when folks are ready.
I move that we recommend approval to council on the applicant's conditional use permit.
A second.
It has been moved and second. Any additional thoughts before we take our vote?
Two additional thoughts. One, again, is to clarify the access of what makes this accessory, is just a, bedroom and kitchen inside somebody's house in the basement, or is it really a separate dwelling unit as part of the house? And two, could we get clarification on, is this for family use like the last one, or is this basically a rental business?
I do know this is for family, it's for an uncle,
I'm sorry.
his uncle.
Okay, it's for family use. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Lucy Zahner. Both of these projects, my question in my brain is, what happens when these people sell this house or this person no longer lives in that unit? Then does it become an apartment that they can rent out to other people? And it becomes not just a single-family dwelling. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, if we're looking at the definition that's in the code, it doesn't really matter if a family member is living there or not. Accessory is, subordinate structured. Am I incorrect in thinking about that? I mean, I don't think it matters, to be perfectly frank with you. I don't think that's a criteria upon which we base it based on who's living there or not. I mean, it's nice that it's within the family, but I don't.
Well, I do think since this is conditional, it could be a condition of the approval. That if, like the lady just said, if there's a concern about flipping the property, just selling it one day and having this basically become a 2-unit apartment house, and same with the previous example. That's why I've raised the question both times. I mean, it's just for the commission to just be aware of it, and presumably the town council will also think about it too. We can have conditions on a conditional use permit. So that's why I raised the question.
Well, that's why we put it in the condition, that's why we put it in the comprehensive plan, was, an accessory dwelling or accessory dwelling unit provides a diversity of housing stock, especially for recent college graduates, for, differently able people to, live independently. And so regardless of who's living there, I think it's not a bad thing.
I'm not suggesting good or bad. I'm just, again, suggesting what is the intent here, and should this be conditioned that whoever owns the property down the road, it's basically a family compound of sorts. It's 2 family units, not 1. I'm not judging the good or bad aspect of it.
I will say that what makes this an accessory dwelling unit is that it is on the same water connection and power connection. It would be a 2-family home if there were separate connections for power and water sewer.
Perfect. With our motion and second, Ms. Watkins, if you'll take our roll call.
Ms. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Davenport?
Aye.
Mr. Patterson?
Aye.
Mr. Crute?
Aye.
Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Alrighty, item 9 on our agenda, public hearing for REZ-001, a rezoning request from Will Allen on behalf of Harper Associates LLC to rezone approximately 31 acres from R1 to R2. The site is located on the 300 block of Mary Wood Farm Road and consists of parcels 0037000 parentheses 0A 00-060B, 0037000 parentheses 0A 00-061, and 0037000 parentheses 0A 00-062. Staff report.
In the staff report, I listed the definitions of the R1 district and the R2 district. R1 is low-density residential. R1 encompasses low-density, single-family residential areas, both existing and planned. The district should provide a suitable environment for families who desire quiet, spacious home sites with the amenities of suburban living without fear of encroachment of dissimilar uses. The R2 district's purpose is moderate density residential to encompass medium density residential areas, both existing and planned, as well as certain compatible public and semi-public land uses. This district should provide a suitable environment for a mix of housing types located in closer proximity to shopping and employment centers. The comprehensive plan shows this area on the future land use as low-density residential, which would allow up to 4 units per acre. The request is to rezone it to R2. In the future land use map, R2 would mean moderate density, which would allow up to 10 units per acre. This request would require a change to the comprehensive plan to update that future land use map. The property has access to town utilities. The developer had VHB do a preliminary memo, and council received that in their staff packet. It says that they located the water and sewer lines, but have not completed an analysis to determine if the water and sewer mains have the capacity for the new development, nor have they completed a fiscal feasibility study of connecting to the utilities identified. VHB has also completed a high-level summary of the potential traffic impacts associated with the development. There is a letter from Chuck Conran and Nancy Carr from VHB that was submitted to the commissioners in your packet. From their analysis, the existing South Main Street access intersections should have the capacity to accommodate the development. The site is not located in an overlay district, floodplain, or other protected area and is currently mostly wooded. I do have some pictures to show. This was a site visit to take some pictures looking at the property from Marywood Farm Road. This was a concept plan that the applicant submitted with the application. The blue is the proposed parcels. Here is a conceptual plan from the applicant. This shows 47 single-family homes and 50 townhouses. This is just a conceptual plan. It is not 100% what would be located on the parcel. This is a buffer plan, which gives you kind of an idea of what the buffer distances would be between this subdivision and Cowell's Court or Jesse's Way. Here are some elevations of homes that the developer feels like might be a good fit in the town of Farmville. There are several slides here. I'll just scroll through them pretty quickly. Staff findings, or this rezoning would require a zoning map change, and it would require an amendment to the comprehensive plans. We did not hold public hearings for those at this time, so we would have to come back with those public hearings. We received 1 phone call in support of the rezoning, and we received 1 phone call in opposition to the rezoning. The staff recommends deferral of the proposed rezoning. Recommendation is to continue with the public hearing and discussion and defer Planning Commission recommendation till a public hearing for amendments to the comprehensive plan and zoning map can be held in June. I can take any questions at this time.
Any questions for Ms. Austin?
I do, as usual. Ashley, I'm hoping you can answer or reconcile 2 facets of this. One is, in some places, the proposal says 97 units, part townhouse, part single-family home, 50 townhouses, 47 single-family homes. 2 of the memos attached from the engineering firm said 140 units. And then the memo that was given to us when we sat down is 97 again. So what's the number? What's the proposed number? Is it 97 or 140?
The applicant is here, so I'll let him speak to that,
Okay.
but I do not believe there's a total set for what this is going to look like yet. We have a conceptual plan, but it is not set for what's actually going to be there yet.
Okay. So we'll talk with the applicant about that. The second is, did I hear you say correctly that sewer is on site? Because one of the engineering memos says it's just barely off site. You said 10 utilities are on site. No, the water is, but sewer as well?
Water is on Marywood Farm Road. Sewer is it runs down an easement behind the parcels on Justice Way.
Okay, and
Which
that
is-
easement is accessible to this site?
It should be. Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Miller?
So maybe this is a better question for the applicant, but as I'm looking at the drawings, it looks like there's one access point to the development on Marywood Farm Road, but then there's like a couple dead ends. Is that the only access point right now, or are they intending to kind of create one through that B3 parcel?
I do not know at this time.
The applicant does own the B3 parcel that has been approved for a conditional use permit back in 2017 for high-density apartments that has not been developed. And that was, I think, before B3 allowed, that was a previous zoning, so I don't know under the current zoning whether that would even need to be the case at this point, but in prior zoning in 17, that was a different story. But if they own both developments, I think it's better coming from the applicant, but yes, potentially could they be joined? They could be, if and when the applicant develops the other parcel.
Scott, do you know if that conditional approval in 2017 required additional accesses for the B3 parcel to be developed?
No, it did not. It only had, the only condition on that was, and Will correct me if I'm wrong, was a right turn out, I believe, of that, no left turn out of the complex, so onto Main Street. So it was, the only way to, when you left, was a right turn only, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Any other clarifying questions for staff? We'll come back and ask the applicant to clarify where needed. We will now ask for the public participation portion to be opened, if there is a motion to do so.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of opening public participation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, can I might can answer, and the applicant probably can too. With what they have in the conceptual, I think is where you're getting the 96, 97 number, Mr. Weiss. If they were to change and have more townhomes than single-family homes, I believe the 140 is an up to 140 units that they could potentially develop with. So it depends at the end of the day, when the final plan is done, whether they decide they have more interests in townhomes versus single-family homes, then townhomes would produce more units than the single-family homes were. So I think, and I think what this one is depicting is the 90-some, but they could look at up to 140, but that would just kind of flip what you see today in some fashion.
Thank you. That makes sense. And that what was in front of us when we sat down also said 97. So I was just trying to understand. What you're saying is it could be up to 140. Okay.
Perfect. Is there anyone signed up for public participation?
Kristen Fisher.
Awesome.
Hello. I actually live on 4th Avenue Extension, which is the last house on 4th Avenue right before Cabell's Court. And so my husband and I and my family are involved in this. We bought our house in 2018, and one of the first questions I had when I looked at the back of the property is, what is happening to all of these woods back there? And a realtor told her that a developer had purchased it and that it would be maybe eventually developed into low-density housing. We bought our house based on this information, that we would be able to have low-density housing, right, with the traffic from Walmart and the loud trucks, that there would be trees and houses to help buffer that when and if it was developed. The conceptual drawing is very pretty, and it looks amazing. However, 140 townhomes is kind of overwhelming, and that is a lot of people and a lot of cars and a lot of noise and a lot of traffic. And I'm just trying to figure out, is there a housing shortage in Farmville that we need 140 townhomes to provide all of the excess housing that we don't have? And I guess I'm really concerned too about, you know, they provide this pretty drawing which has the lowest density number of buildings that it could. They could have provided one that had 140 some housings, right, which could sway the committee. While I think it's pretty, I think there's a lot of wiggle room in here that the developer hasn't spent time really focusing and figuring out how they want to develop it, which on one hand I can understand, but it directly impacts me and my family and how we get around town. I would like to urge the committee to not change the comprehensive plan and vote against changing the zoning. And the one last question that I have is, there's actually storm drainage that runs right by my house. So with all of this development, what does that do to all the rainwater and storm drainage system that happens that goes to the pond behind other houses? Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional participants?
No, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak related to this project? Sir, you can come forward. Please.
Okay. Good evening, Town Manager. My name is Gary Tuck, and I live on 110 Jesse's Way, which is right across the street from this proposed development. And everybody remembers way back 6, 7 years ago when the Harper Associates wanted to put apartments in there. I think it's the same section. And there was huge kickback from the people around that area because of the safety factor of coming out on Main Street, entrance and exit. But by this drawing, from what I see, I'm assuming that they're going to come out on Marywood. That's what I would hope anyway. If that's the case, that's fine. I didn't think Jesse's Way was going to be involved until I hear him say about the sewer connection runs right across from my house, right down my street. So I have a little concern about that. I'm assuming that many people involved in it the sewers can handle it. And the lady just spoke about the drainage of a storm coming through. There's a creek running right through, right behind that, right across from my house in that area. And I'm a little concerned about that. All the homes there now, the creek runs behind them. Is my time up? No. It's not a problem with most heavy storm coming through. I've seen the creek get up about halfway. But that may be something just to keep in mind, the drainage coming off of asphalt and that many, wherever it goes. I just wanted to be curious about that. I can't think of anything else, so I'm going to phase out. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, can I address, it since there's been two people that talk about drainage,
Yes.
if you notice on the drawings, there's 3 ponds that are for stormwater management. And I'll let the applicant correct me if I'm wrong, but based on this conceptual, the stormwater management would send water to those 3 different locations for that development. And if you'll notice, they're on their property, if you're looking at, help if I had my glasses. If you look at the small section, or the section that goes between Cabell and the property line, they have 120 foot of vegetation and trees that they do not plan to remove. There's 300 and some feet in one area that goes back almost to the creek that was just discussed. And then the closest corner to Jesse's Way, or that creek, is still 100 foot of buffer on the applicant's property of natural buffer based on this. And one of the reasons for that natural buffer is also the slope of the land, which doesn't make it feasible for development, but also that already has a natural drainage from the contour of that land that would go in that river, or not river, in that creek bed. I've seen it almost like a river before. But as far as that scenario, those are still natural buffers for that development that is very difficult for this developer to even, and costly, I don't want to speak for them, to actually go into that area or beyond towards that property line. Just food for thought since the discussion of drainage came up.
And Scott, in the same diagram, the pond, or the stormwater management pond in the lower left, that pond already exists, right? That when I went by this, there's a pond already on the site somewhere in that vicinity, correct?
I don't think so, no.
Off?
Yeah. There's a pond on Gillum Drive,
when
behind Gillum Drive.
No, when you drive on Marywood, there's one right off the road.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I was talking, oh, no.
And when they talk about connecting to the sewer, it's actually in a right-of-way. There's a manhole where the sewer is in those woods that's on the other side of their property line, that would have to feed into directly. It would have to go into that manhole directly. And the other thing they have to look at is whether it's the feasibility of if they have enough gravity feed to do that, or whether they have to end up having a pump station in another method. So without going into further evaluations, they wouldn't know that at this point in time.
Perfect. You got a question?
Is it appropriate, because I see like in the memo that was submitted with the packet, VHB says they performed only preliminary engineer efforts to assess the physical feasibility. And then, they're talking about more, but they were assumed to occur after the rezoning phase. So it's appropriate for them to do more research after the zoning's been approved, or should they have that information now?
I mean, that's up to you, whether you want to do that or not. But I mean, at this point in time, to get that far into the study, the money that cost, and then you say no, that they've already invested in a property in order to develop it. I don't know that that's that you'd have to ask the developer that, but to me, no, that wouldn't be as feasible for them to do that. And they have to prove to us when they get a full site plan, which comes back to you all. So this is one phase of rezoning. The other phase is they have to have, before they can build, they have to have more than the preliminary or conceptual site plan that shows those details that you're talking about. Where's the sewer going to be? Is it meet the requirements of this and the water? That's all of that is part of the overall site plan approval when they go to develop the actual site.
Perfect. What we can do is move to close public participation if there. We'll do it. Did you?
I'm just going to speak for a few seconds. My name is Dave Davino. I'm on 105 Jesse's Way. And I guess I'm just going to echo and just put on the record kind of what was eloquently just put forward by the young lady here regarding kind of really concerns about that the impact of rezoning this to a more moderate density kind of housing plan to the residents around in that area, especially traffic. I know there was some sort of study that said it would be able to handle traffic, but I don't know if that's just because it can handle traffic doesn't mean it's not going to get really a lot busier there. And I also just worry about the environmental impact about that space. I know regarding how that will affect just the aesthetics of one of the reasons why I moved to this town and moved to just a couple years ago to that area. So it's very beautiful with kind of the woods back there. I know it's still for residential for residences, but when you're looking at up to 147 potential units, that dramatically changes the characteristics of that area of Farmville. So I'm really concerned about that, and I'm also kind of concerned about that. It sounds like there's still a lot of questions regarding. It sounds very conceptual. So I hope that if there is a vote on this, that it's to rezone this to a moderate density housing project, that that you don't put the cart before the horse in the context of that. It sounds like there's still a lot of questions. It's in the conceptual phase. So I hope people kind of take that into consideration too as well. So that's a question I have.
Thank you. All righty.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Will Allen. Thanks for having me here and giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the application. I think Ashley has done a great job giving the application an overview. It's 31 acres that we're looking at, and the current zoning is R1, and the dwelling units per acre, I believe, is 3, and what we're proposing is a little less than 4 per acre. Just to kind of put it in perspective, so it's not like some massive shift to the other end of the spectrum of from a density perspective. A lot of the reason that's driving why we're looking at R2 versus R1 is because of the lot sizes that are baked into the ordinance and the code that don't really fit with some of the more modern trends that we're seeing in the housing market, where folks are looking to live with smaller lots, or even for a townhome where you have really a very small lot, low maintenance. And that's a trend that we're seeing, and we think would be appropriate for here in this area. We own the adjacent parcel next to Walmart and have been a part of that for a long time, and believe that it being close to that commercial kind of hub where there's already a lot of activity, jobs, and folks and commerce, it's an appropriate extension of the density there. There were some concerns brought up about stormwater. I think that was a great consideration to bring up. This project would be up to current standards. We'd have to go through and do stormwater calculations, create basins that would not only contain the water runoff, the quantity, but also the quality of that runoff that would be generated. In terms of the plan that we presented, it's what we think is the best ratio right now between single-family detached, and we've kind of tried to orient that in a way that honors where the R1 areas are, because it's most proximate to those neighborhoods, those lots. They're smaller lots at 8,000 square feet. So we tried to wrap that around and where the R1 area is, and then put the townhomes, kind of cluster those closer to where the B3, the higher density, as well as where the Walmart is. So we were trying to be sensitive and to that comment, particularly that I'm sensitive to, that David, Kristen, and Gary brought up. So let's see. I think that's the main points I want to talk about in terms of the density. The need statements, I'd say generally the site is surrounded by adequate transportation, utilities, and services. We engaged our engineer VHB to look at those at the threshold level. Certainly, when we go to do full designs, we'll need to dig in and figure out if there were to be any capacity issues on the threshold. Right now, they're saying they don't think that there are any, that we should go to the next step. High density, high value commercial proceeds development in the immediate area, which is typical of development patterns. While residents of this proposed community will use those services, additional population will strengthen the long-term viability of those businesses, as well as businesses in the central business area. So research has proven that new housing inventory has appealed to entry-level and move-down buyers that may be on fixed income or have means to buy a home, not the means for capital associated with maintenance or renovation required for the older housing stock. There's not a lot of new supply in the market, and we think that this development, we're not technically calling it a phased development, but this is something that, we could introduce and see as we go how the marketing goes on that, and bring new product online. And this would be an alternative to rental opportunities for professionals and folks that are moving into the community. So I wanted to field any questions that you might have specifically.
Yes, I do. So what is your price point for these, or do you have a range that you've developed yet?
No, we haven't developed a range. I would say, generally speaking, in other markets, it's going to be in the 200s to maybe 300s, and it depends also if it's a townhome versus a single-family home.
So the townhomes would be less expensive, like
Yes.
more in the 200 range, and the
Yes.
single family. Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
You'd have they'd be a little more spacious.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, real quick, would the idea be to develop this complete as develop this complete, or parcel some of these lots out and sell off the lots and let other developers build houses in there?
I think 100 units to be absorbed in Farmville is going to take a little bit of time, so I don't think it's going to sell out in a year. I think it's going to take some time. It's probably 5 years or so for that to get absorbed into the market. We would likely partner with a builder. So we would do the development work and then partner with a builder to come in and build the homes.
So if I could ask you, just repeat the question I asked, Dr. Davis earlier about the traffic. So do you plan to kind of put an entry, a road through your B3 parcel to Main Street, or are you just right at the moment looking at doing Marywood Farms right now?
Just Marywood Farms.
Marywood Farms, okay.
So I was going to ask something similar. Your proposal is just to develop this 31 acres, or the extent that it can be developed. As Scott said, some of it can't really be developed because of the topography and such. This is not a trigger to develop the B3 parcel as well, or additional sites that you may have adjacent to this?
It's not involved.
Okay.
I would like to see some of these to be, that would be affordable. So is that something that the developer would be amenable to?
I'd need to understand what is the definition of affordable.
Yeah, well, I understand. There's a lot of different definitions, but I would say like workforce housing. So believe it or not, there are folks here that work full-time that cannot afford a $250,000, $300,000 home. So.
I would just say I don't know that you can make that part of the rezoning. You can share your feelings about affordability and the price point, but you can't make that a condition or a reason for the rezoning.
Thank you. That's good to know. And yeah, I was just expressing my feelings. So I'm just thinking, as if you're trying to sell all these homes, you're going to have the people that can buy them. So,
It's an excellent point, and I think when you execute something like this, we're going to have to be sensitive to that price point in order to maximize the pool of potential buyers.
Along the lines of something you mentioned before about, it relates to affordability, but also how many are going to go here, the density. You made an interesting point that at 97 or so, that's not really increasing density compared to by right R1. It's just a little bit of an increase. What you're really doing is reducing lot sizes or zero lot size because it's townhouses, correct?
Yes.
So your proposal is not really about increasing density. It's about creating a different layout and different types of housing choices than would be allowed in R1 by right. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to tailor the lots to be what we're seeing in other markets to be very popular for folks, and as well as the townhome lots, which neither of these, even if you built them on a smaller scale, they don't fit because the lot sizes don't work within the ordinance. So the density, we couldn't build less density with this. We couldn't build less just because of the way the lot configurations are. The lot sizes are too small to fit within the R1 district. So you're correct. As far as density goes, if it's 31 acres and an average of 3, you're talking about 93 units, and we're at 97. And the question came up about, like, why did we choose 140 for the memo? And we thought that it was probably prudent to go higher than what we're showing, just so that there is a little leeway in case we flexed and went with more townhomes potentially. I don't see that being all that realistic. It might, if right now it's 40, 60, I mean, could you flip that and it would be more townhomes than single family? And I'm just making that hypothetical number up just to kind of paint the four corners of what I'm trying to describe. That could flip, but for the most part, we've been working on this for the last 6 or 7 months, and I think barring any major changes with engineering or topo or something like that, I think we're feeling pretty good about this layout.
And in that regard, the layout would be, the developable land, to Scott's point, would be really the same, whether this is R1 or R2, because of the topography, the creeks, the stormwater management, things of this nature.
Right, and so right now we have about 9 to 10 acres that wouldn't be developed of the 30 acres. So about a third of that would remain vegetated or undisturbed or a buffer.
Right, and my question is, it's the same 9 or 10 roughly, whether it's R1 or R3. You can't develop on a particular slope, whether it's single family or townhouses, if it's too steep.
Yeah, you'd probably be pushing the feasibility. We're not on an RPA boundary line that's causing that constraint, but no, the topo, you get to a point where it doesn't make sense to grade that area. It'd just be more costly to do that than the return of trying to actually develop the lot. So yeah, that 8 areas would remain vegetated. Well, I think the only clarifying point would be if we had to extend the sewer, we might need to have an area there that would, 20 feet or whatever, that we'd have to clear in order to get to it, but we'd, replant that buffer area.
All righty. Any other thoughts or questions? Thank you, sir. I think we're now at a point where we can close the public participation.
Is it okay if I leave business cards in case anybody wants to follow up with me?
I'm gonna take one more. You can come on. This will be our last.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Robert Dillman. My family and I reside at 109 Jesse's Way. In addition to echoing the residential and community concerns that have been expressed, I'll say that our property line runs right where that buffer is the narrowest, at 100 feet. And looking at it, just understanding what we see from the back of our house, it looks like that development comes right to the top of that slope that Mr. Davis referred to earlier. The slope runs downhill to a stream that is mentioned, and then onto our property, which is that low meadow below our house. So just wanted to add that buffer line at its narrowest point looks very narrow given the geography that's there. So wanted to point that out to you. Thank you.
All righty. Is there a motion to close public participation?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor of closing public participation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I will leave any final comments, knowing that we're not taking a vote tonight as we await consideration of the comprehensive plan adjustment.
Mr. Chairman, since there's been another question about buffer, just so people know, can you, while they're discussing this a little bit further, can you tell them there's no required buffer area between residential districts, residential 1 and 2, but if this were like the parcel in front of it, a commercial district, just to give you some idea, this being 100 feet and 300 feet that he's showing, what's the buffer area that's required between commercial and residential neighborhoods? Because it's a lot less than what they have here. So I just want to share with you that in the zoning code, if you were to put a business, a commercial development, and the housing is directly behind it, that landscape buffering that would have to be done after the fact is a lot less, I believe, than what theirs is as a natural buffer.
It is 25 feet.
Yeah. So just so that you're mindful, and for the public's knowledge, if you were living behind a commercial development, which one is, if it's developed to B3, Cabell, the only requirement is 25 feet. And that's a fence and landscaping, not even natural vegetative trees that have been there for however long these have been. So just as a mindful concept of what we're talking about, that we're talking about 2 residential districts, not even a commercial and residential district. And when we have commercial and residential, it's a lot less than what's actually being proposed.
So what you're saying is, like, say, I know for that 100-foot buffer and that 300-foot buffer, you made the point that it's not developable, or it's not developable, cost feasibly developable. But say, what if it was and they wanted to do this, keep this R1? Would they have to have any buffer on these properties right now between that and the existing properties on Jesse's Way and Cabell?
I don't believe so. Not between R1 and R2.
There would just
Or
be
R1
your
and R1.
Just your bulk regulations, so your 25-foot setback to the rear yard line.
Okay.
So as a R1 neighborhood, I mean, they could back up directly to 25 feet, the rear setback, yard to yard.
Mr. Chairman, to clarify, is a vote's required tonight to defer?
Yes. Okay, thanks for that.
Or approve or deny, but there is a vote required on the CUP as presented.
We're suggesting deferring because even if you approve the rezoning tonight, you still have to, for it to work, you still have to approve a comprehensive plan amendment and an official zoning map amendment.
And
so, I mean, yes, you could, but if you don't do the other two next month, for whatever reason, it doesn't work.
And just to, I guess, further elaborate there, staff's recommendation for deferral is only due to aligning really the three processes, and so that if there is an action taken, really either way, that we're not doing this for several months. There's no other concerns from a staff perspective about the application as presented.
No, there's no other concerns. The deferral was to align the three public hearings together.
Which is my fault. I should have reminded her as in her interim role, and that falls on me, so I apologize.
So question for Ashley and Scott then, in following up on what Patrick's asking about, if we deferred, and if in, say, June, there's a public hearing, and ultimately, we recommend and the town council approves both the zoning map change and the comprehensive plan change, excuse me, then this isn't a rezoning request anymore. If we going forward into the future state is we've approved this becoming our.
You would do all three. You have to do all three because you can't rezone a piece of property and then leave the official zoning map as R1.
No, I'm understanding what you're saying. If we change the zoning map, presumably it's changing it to R2, correct?
But you actually have to have a public hearing for all three of those and approve all three of those separately.
Other way. It's the rezoning request triggers the change.
Okay.
Not the
Right.
converse.
Well, okay, but in any event, what I'm getting at is it's sort of approving all of it or none of it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Regardless of which
Correct.
of the three public hearings happens in which case.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
As we wrap up this conversation tonight, are there any additional pieces of info that you feel need to come to the table as we gather in June?
I would just like to share a thought with the Planning Commission for when we come back, assuming we're about to vote to defer, and when we come back, is just to think about between now and then. It seems to me that a lot of the concerns on all sides here can be addressed if we maintain what the density would be if this were R1 and a by right development. If this were R1 and they wanted to build homes, obviously staff would have to approve the site plan and there'd be various other administrative approvals, but the zoning would allow a certain density, a certain number of housing units per acre. So this, based on what the writings in front of us and what the applicant said, it's really not about the density here. It's about just the configuration of the units on this property, and the types of units, townhouses and homes with smaller lots, single-family homes with smaller lots. So what I'm thinking that may address the points we've heard tonight is if we were to rezone to have a condition, maybe it's by proffer, or otherwise, that the density is no greater, the resulting density is no greater than what could happen anyway if this were R1.
It would have to be a voluntary proffer. You can't,
Right.
yeah.
Proffers by definition are voluntary.
Right.
So I'll make a comment and then a motion. You know, it's a shame that we don't have a process in place by which the developer could readily react to topography and be, do some interesting developments, and to have to go through this process. So, with that,
include affordable housing.
correct, or perhaps other uses.
So, Mr. Crute, I know what you're driving at is plan unit development, which we're not going to discuss this evening.
That's why I didn't say it.
Per our agenda.
However, and being transparent as we have been lately about that, I did have a conversation with Mr. Allen about that, and their choice was not to wait, but they felt that they could do the project they wanted to do in this method. Am I correct? And so, what you will notice from this drawing, one of the reasons for rezoning is because they wanted to configure this for different styles of housing in smaller lot sizes, which is a key component to what we've been talking about. But I'll get off my soapbox.
I move to defer.
A second.
Excellent. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. O'Connor,
Aye.
Mr. Weiss,
Aye.
Ms. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Davenport,
Aye.
Mr. Patterson,
Aye.
Mr. Crute,
Aye.
Dr. Miller.
Aye.
Seeing that we have no old business, we will move to new business, and department update, upcoming major cases, and so forth.
Department update, you received a director's report in your staff packet. You may notice that we've listed Philip Moore as our building official. So Nicholas Bowles' last day was April 28th. He is no longer with us. Other items, or we will be having a planning commission Wednesday, June 21st. We will work on gathering data for a public hearing for the zoning map change and amendment to the comprehensive plan. And we will also work with the CUP 23-001 applicant to bring that back to the planning commission. I don't have any other staff updates at this time.
Thank you very much. Any thoughts? If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn. Dr. Miller.
I'm sorry to hold us up.
You're fine.
But just to kind of come back to something we were talking about with that first public hearing, and thinking about Patrick's comment that if this is becoming a more frequent use in other localities, but it doesn't kind of fit neatly, within the land use matrix. And again, a good part of my diet, it does come from convenience stores. I'm like, I eat Hunt Brothers Pizza like it's my job. But I've never seen an RN, in a convenience store. Like how hard is it to kind of create a new category in the land use matrix? What do we need to do? What's the timeline to kind of add something that might accommodate what they want to do within the appropriate neighborhood?
The same thing you're working on with the plan unit development. Unless you're going to change the definition of a convenience store, then it's a modification to a definition. But I don't think you want to create a new definition for a convenience store for one item. And even then, it'd have to go through you have to go through a public hearing at the planning commission process for an ordinance change and the town council. So you're looking at least 2-3 months.
Anything we're talking about here, Scott, would require that, right? I mean, even if we had a PUD in place today, we would be having public hearings at the planning commission and the town council levels to approve a PUD, even if we had the ordinance in place.
No, he was talking about,
The definition change, but
Yeah.
all of these things
Yeah.
require the same types of approvals.
Yeah, sure.
That's my point.
but if you're talking about creating another land use category in the matrix, then you're talking about coming up with what is that and how do we define it on its own merit, right? Where would it be allowed? Looking at the matrix, where would you allow that type of use? And so it's a little bit more than a definition change.
Any other thoughts before we motion?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
While we're speaking of CUP 23-001, we need to go back. I would like a clarification on your deference, the reason, a clear reason why you're deferring, why you made the motion to defer.
You mean
correct.
Project 9? I mean, item 9?
Item number 6. And then I would need to also do a roll call vote on that item.
I'm going to look to Mr. Crute.
That was like 9 hours ago. Yeah, I'd say in summation for, further public engagement using the actual definition of what the business will be is the biggest one. And then having staff further assess and make a recommendation based on their, our new information that's been presented.
Thank you. And we also need to do a roll call vote on that item, on that deference.
All righty. So going back to item 6 on our agenda, we will do our roll call vote.
Ms. O'Connor?
Aye.
Mr. Weiss?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Davenport?
Nay.
Mr. Patterson?
Aye.
Mr. Crute?
Aye.
Dr. Miller?
Aye.
Thank you for those clarifications. We will take our motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. You all, and have a great night.